Gitrog Ravenous Ride can do some wonky things, especially with cards like Wall of Blood. Let's just say you have a Wall of Blood in play, pay 39 life, you got 40, who needs 39 of it? Pay 39 life in the Wall of Blood, make it really, really big. Saddle up the Gitrog, swing, draw 39 cards, put up the 39 lands from your hand into play, and you're off to the races. There's a lot of really cool synergies with Gitrog Monstrous Ride. Some of the other cards that you can use to spend life to be able to make a creature really big and then swing with Gitrog and sack it and do all the things include cards like Hatred, Soul Drinker, and Unspeakable Symbol. There's also a bunch of cards that you can use in the deck that are just big creatures on the cheap, so that way you can pay like 3 mana for an 8/8 and then swing and sack it, and voila, you draw 8 cards and put up to 8 lands from your hand to play. Seems like a pretty good synergy in this deck. Some of those cards include Hunted Bone Brute, Daemogoth Titan, along with Daemogoth Woe Eater, Yargle Multani, also just Yargle, Rotting Regisaur, Ghalta, you got a lot of big things, so Ghalta's going to be dirt cheap, Phyrexian Soul Gorger, Lupine Prototype, just for 2 mana is pretty nice, Hunted Horror, along with Hunted Troll, Phytotitan, that thing just keeps coming back, which is nice, and Growth Thama, which can essentially draw you some extra cards too. If you're going to run all of these big creatures that are cheap, you might as well run some cards that synergize with having a lot of big creatures. Cards like Vault-Born Tyrant, Skullspore Nexus seems unbelievable in this deck because when you sack a big thing to Gitrog, you get another big thing that you can then sack to Gitrog. And Selvala can net you a ton of mana and draw you a bunch of cards. You could even throw in Death's Presence, so whenever you sacrifice one of these big creatures, you make one of your other big creatures even bigger. With the Gitrog letting you drop all these lands into play for free, you might as well run some creatures that get bigger with the number of lands you control, because it just gets exponentially bigger every time you sack something, and then when you sack them, you're going to draw a ton of cards and do all these things. Those seem really fun in this deck. Some cards like that are Ashaya, Beanstalk Giant, which is also ramp, which is nice, Allosaur Rider, which could also be 0 mana for a creature that can get humongous, which you can then sack to Gitrog, which is a perfect card for this deck. Cultivator Colossus, Greensleeves, which also has a landfall trigger, which is nice. Lumra when it comes out, and Uvenwald Hydra, which can get any land you need from your deck, which is pretty useful, high utility. When you're just dumping lands from your hand into the battlefield, landfall cards are going to get really, really powerful, so you might as well run some landfall synergies. There's a lot of really good landfall cards that you can run in this deck, and some of those are Avenger of Zendikar. Baelith Woodcrasher can just one-shot people potentially. Bristly Bill can make your creatures larger when you sacrifice them, and then boom, you get all of these good things. Corsair Crewfix, Druid Class, and Jaddi Offshoot seem like auto-includes. Since you're going to be paying all your life into Wall of Blood, Hatred, cards like those, you're going to need ways to gain that life back, and if you have Jaddi Offshoot in play and you Wall of Blood for 39, play a bunch of lands, your life total comes back up, and you also have a handful of cards, that seems really worthwhile. Curse of Restless Dead and Field of the Dead can net you a ton of zombies. Gul'Draz's Overseer seems pretty sweet in the deck. Lotus Cobra and Nissa can turn those tapped lands into mana that you can use that turn. Nissa Shadowed Bow is just reusable reanimate, especially when you're dropping a ton of lands into play every turn. Obnixilis is a finisher that can just kill people. Rampaging Baloth to make a ton of tokens that are really big. Retreat to Hagra and Retreat to Kazandu seem like auto-includes, great cards there. Roaring Earth is almost another Bristly Bill, which is nice. Scoot Swarm can outright win the game. That card's going to be disgusting and really annoying to track, but super worthwhile. Tireless Provisioner and Tireless Tracker can net you cards, they can net you mana, they can net you food, it's all good. And then Zendikar Royal for some elementals. You're going to have a lot of mana playing this deck because you're dumping so many lands into play, so some good finishers you can throw into this deck, which you're going to need some of, but my favorites for this are going to be Exsanguinate and Torment of Hailfire. You just dump a ton of mana into these and kill your opponents. Psychosis Crawler and Shieldred seem fantastic for this deck. Psychosis Crawler turns your card draw into damage, and Shieldred turns that card draw into life gain. Extra combat steps would be awesome in this deck, but you're in Golgari, so that's not really a doable thing. So extra turns would be awesome with this deck, but you're in Golgari, so that's not really a doable thing, except 2 cards. You've got Seed Time, which is kind of difficult to pull off, but very, very good if you can. and Temporal Extortion, which can actually be a likely scenario considering you're going to be dealing a ton of damage with all these big creatures, and people are going to be kind of scared of that. Gitrog triggers every time you deal combat damage, so double strike would mean it triggers twice in a turn. You can saddle it with more than one creature if you want to. So, you can run cards like Fire Shrieker to get double strike on your Gitrog and hit people twice and get faster commander damage and then get super draw triggers. There's a few extremely cheap and or recurable ways to make your creatures just bigger so you're drawing more cards, and those include Invigorate, Nightmare Lash, seems awesome in this deck, Berserk, and Rancor. You could also throw in Blackblade Reforged, except it's going to be a little pricey when you're not equipping it to legendary creatures, but it could make Gitrog a one-shot. A few other ways you can make your creatures significantly larger so that you're drawing a ton of extra cards. You've got Zopandrel and Unnatural Growth to double your power, seems worth it, and Railway Brawler to just put a ton of counters on things and make things big. A big utility creature that's not always going to be big, but oftentimes can be ginormous. You got Band of Progress, just blowing everything up and getting huge, and it's just also decent removal. If you don't want to lose whatever big creature you sack to the Gitrog, you can use cards like Not Dead After All, Malakir Rebirth, Supernatural Stamina, and Feign Death to keep them alive by them dying and then return to the battlefield. And the last cards I wanted to mention, you know those lands that you have entering the battlefield tapped because of Gitrog's ability? Well, what if they were untapped? What if you had cards like Amulet of Vigor, or Spelunking, or Tiller Engine? Then you have all this mana available to you right away. Also, Stonecedar Hierophant can do something very similar. Seems like a great include in the deck. That's what I've got for Gitrog Ravenous Ride. If you had any other card ideas, put them in the comment section below, and I hope you enjoyed this. See you next time.